I kicked my husband and his manipulative female friend out after he moved her into our home and wanted to sleep with her in the same room. I am 28 years old, my husband is 30. We have been married for 4 years. We got married after 3 years of dating. Everything in our relationship was fine, except for one thing. His close bond with his best friend. His best friend, as he calls her, is his neighbor from childhood. They were always together. I'll call her Lena. Lena and my husband went to the same daycare, the same elementary school, middle school and high school. They even enrolled in the same college, though in different departments. They were inseparable from early childhood, and I can't even forget about it, because they constantly bring it up, at every convenient opportunity. They only drifted apart when they started working. That's exactly when I met my husband. Once Lena told me that I am the third most important woman in my husband's life. The first is his mother, the second is her, and only then comes me. She said it as if it were a joke, but I am sure that's how she really feels. Honestly, I always thought that she didn't like me and saw me as a rival. When my husband and I had just started dating, he introduced her to me as his older friend, and I tried to be nice to her. But she immediately started mocking how much makeup I was wearing and said that I didn't need to impress her. This happened again and again. She constantly made snide remarks about my makeup, my clothes, and everything else. There were also jabs disguised as compliments, after which I felt insecure. Once she told me directly that my husband has a taste for stupid blondes, and I am blonde. I think you already understand what kind of person I was dealing with. I tried several times to talk to my husband about this, even before we got married. I told him that I had a bad feeling about Lena, but he always brushed it off and kept saying that I would get used to her over time, that she doesn't appeal to everyone because she never filters what she says and is too straightforward for most women. Probably the fact that my husband put other women down to make her look good should have alarmed me. But honestly, it seemed like a small thing compared to the fact that I could be with him, because he was perfect in every other way. He was exactly the man I had dreamed of, smart, funny, charming. And I was ready to tolerate Lena, because I really wanted to be with him, and he always made it clear that he loved me. So everything was fine. Over time, I stopped paying attention to Lena and didn't let her get to me. And when she got a boyfriend, things became even better, because she stopped picking on me for no reason. 4 years ago, Lena met Mark through a dating app. And a year later they got engaged. To say that she lost her head over him would be an understatement. And it seemed like he was in love with her too. Despite their obvious attachment to each other, I still believe that 1 year is not enough to truly get to know a person. And they hadn't lived together long enough to even think about marriage. But Lena and I were not friends, and I knew that if I tried to say anything to her about it, she would start a scandal. So I just kept quiet. I told my husband about my concerns, hoping that he would gently guide her toward a more reasonable decision. But he only admired how great it was that he and Lena got engaged almost at the same time, and that maybe we would have our weddings at the same time. They even discussed the idea of a joint wedding, but I shut that down at an early stage, saying that Lena and I had completely different views on everything. And thankfully, she didn't insist. She married Mark about a month after our wedding, and everything was fine, until recently. 5 months ago, Lena admitted to my husband that she was unable to get pregnant. She and Mark were planning to undergo medical tests because they had been trying unsuccessfully for almost 6 months. Unfortunately, it turned out that Lena was infertile. From that moment on, their marriage began to fall apart. And although they tried to see a marriage counselor, it didn't help, because Mark eventually filed for divorce. He didn't want to be married to a woman with whom he couldn't have children, and didn't want to spend his life in a childless marriage. That was low of him. I felt sorry for Lena. She started visiting us much more often than before. And I tolerated it, because I understood that she was going through a very hard time, and my husband apparently was her only real friend. I couldn't get irritated by her frequent visits, because every time she came over, she just cried, and my husband tried to comfort her. It was almost impossible to be angry at someone who was already going through such a nightmare, because I knew that she truly loved Mark. Then the divorce proceedings began, and negotiations over dividing property. They had to see each other often, and that made things even harder for her. She began sinking deeper into despair. That's when my husband asked me whether she could stay with us for a while, until she felt better, because according to her, being near him supposedly made her feel normal again. That was almost 2 weeks ago. And the moment I let her into my home, I immediately regretted it. She criticized literally everything I did, and she got away with it. After all, she was depressed. She didn't like the food. She didn't like how our house was furnished. She didn't like my TV shows. In the end, we had to do everything her way, because in my husband's opinion, that's what she needed right now. I told him more than once that I wanted Lena to leave, and that if she didn't like anything, she could go back to living with her parents. But he begged me to let her stay, because he was afraid that she might do something stupid to herself if we kicked her out in such a fragile state. So I didn't say anything to her. I didn't want that to be on my conscience later. But the day before yesterday, I finally had to kick them both out, because they crossed all boundaries. When I came home from work, I saw that my husband had moved some of his things from our bedroom into the guest room where Lena was staying. He had come home early, specifically to arrange all of this. When I arrived, he and Lena were still moving his things into that room. I was in shock and asked my husband to talk to me in private. But he said we could talk right in front of Lena. Honestly, for the first time in weeks, I asked why he was moving into the guest room, and he answered completely calmly that from now on, he would be living in the same room with Lena. For a few seconds, I was completely frozen. When I asked, what the hell is going on here? He said that Lena had been having panic attacks for several days in a row, and that she needed someone to comfort her at night when she woke up in panic because of the divorce. I immediately told him that this was out of the question, and that he was completely out of his mind. He thought I would put up with this. But once again, he used his favorite excuse about Lena. She is like a sister to him, and I have nothing to worry about. They both stood there smiling at me, as if that smile could make everything that was happening normal and acceptable. I was so angry and disappointed that I wanted to punch them both. But instead, my rage reached such a level that I decided to act differently. I smiled back at them and said that I completely understood them and that everything was absolutely fine with me. My husband even dared to say that he was sure I would understand, and they continued setting up the room. Meanwhile, I went back to our bedroom and took out the house documents. This house was a gift from my father when I got my first job, and it is registered only in my name. That means that legally, the house belongs to me. When I found the papers, I returned to the guest room and very politely asked whether they were done unpacking. When they said yes, I replied that it was time for them to start packing again, because very soon, they would be out on the street, where they could play happy family as much as they wanted. My husband didn't understand what was happening for several seconds, until I showed him the documents and told him that the house was mine, and that I was no longer going to tolerate this in my own home, or allow them to humiliate me like this. He tried to joke it off, thinking that I was kidding. But when he realized that I wasn't laughing, he said that I was behaving absurdly, and that I couldn't just kick them out. I replied that I could, and that I already was, so arguing with me was pointless. I told him that he disgusted me, and that Lena disgusted me even more, because right now, she was something between a hysterical mess and a whiny victim, and it was incredibly irritating. Of course, Lena started crying again, and my husband rushed to defend her and accused me of always being jealous of her because I was insecure. I didn't even deny it, because it was true. I really am insecure. But the problem wasn't me, it was their twisted relationship. I told them that if they couldn't live without each other, then they shouldn't even try to start relationships with other people and ruin their lives the way they ruined mine. After that, a brutal argument started, but in the end, they still left. My husband said that he felt insulted because he loved me, and that still wasn't enough for me. Lena wouldn't stop sobbing, and in the end, accused me of jealousy and cruelty. I didn't answer her. I didn't have the strength to argue with them anymore. I just wanted them to disappear. I thought that all my problems would end as soon as they left. But apparently I was wrong. Because the moment I kicked them out, our mutual friends, the same ones who had never been interested in our marriage before, started writing to me, telling me that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. In their opinion, my husband just wanted to support Lena, because panic attacks are serious, and instead of showing compassion, I turned everything into drama and reduced it all to my own insecurities. I immediately understood that he had put them up to it, because all the messages were practically copy-pasted. I tried to ignore them, but then he involved his family as well. Every single one of them started repeating that I was behaving terribly by kicking them out when Lena was going through such a difficult period. They said that I had no heart, that I didn't deserve such a husband as him. Apparently, it had been clear from the beginning that I was not a match for him. And somewhere deep inside, I knew that myself, which is why I felt threatened by Lena. I realized that arguing with them was pointless and simply blocked everyone for the sake of my own peace of mind. None of these people tried to understand how I felt. They didn't care. They only cared about my husband, about Lena, and about how they felt. I thought that blocking them would solve the problem, and I was already preparing to file for divorce. But my husband contacted me again from a different number and said that he was still ready to come back to me if I apologized. In that message, he once again repeated that he had always considered Lena the sister he never had, and that he had never had any romantic feelings for her. So I had misunderstood everything. He said that he cared about her and even loved her, but that it was platonic brotherly love, not the kind of love he felt for me. He said that the thought of living his life without me was killing him, that he had made a mistake by leaving back then. But he also believed that I had reacted too harshly and misunderstood everything. He asked me to think about everything calmly and carefully weigh the consequences of my actions, because he didn't want me to do something stupid that I would regret for the rest of my life. He said that he was ready to come back and rebuild our relationship if we both apologized to each other for the misunderstanding. I honestly didn't know how to react to this, because in my opinion, I hadn't gone too far. And now, I'm not even sure whether divorcing him is the right decision at all, since he keeps insisting that Lena is like a sister to him. To be honest, this message completely threw me off balance, and now I'm not sure whether it's worth taking this all the way to the end. Did I really do something wrong by kicking my husband out after he said that he wanted to sleep in the same room with his childhood friend to comfort her during her nighttime panic attacks? So before we continue and move on to the update, I suggest writing your opinion in the comments on this matter. Personally, I believe that the author did absolutely the right thing, and it doesn't matter what kind of relationship her husband and this friend have. I mean, whether they sleep together, whether they have a romantic relationship, or a brother and sister type of relationship, it simply doesn't matter. Because it's still not normal. If their relationship is like that of siblings, that's also complete madness. Seems like some kind of mental disorder to me. This whole situation reminded me of the movie The Dreamers from 2003. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out. There, a guy meets a brother and sister who have very strange relationships. They supposedly don't sleep together, but still allow themselves much more than a brother and sister ever should. They're stuck in some childish phase while already being fully grown adults. And it all ends with the main character simply not being able to take it anymore and leaving, because those people start doing completely insane things, putting their lives in danger. And not just mild danger, but real deadly danger. So yes, absolutely. The author should leave such a husband if he allows himself things like this. And now, let's continue. A few days after I received that message, I finally decided to respond. I told him that I had thought everything through, and that I stood by my decision. I said that I did not believe that what he suggested was normal, no matter how he tried to explain it. I reminded him that I had never forbidden him to support Lena, to help her, or to be there for her emotionally. But wanting to sleep in the same room with her, especially knowing how uncomfortable that made me feel, crossed every possible boundary. I told him that marriage means respecting your partner's feelings, and he clearly failed to do that. He replied almost immediately. He said that I was exaggerating again, and that I was destroying our family over nothing. He claimed that I was letting my jealousy ruin everything we had built together. Then he added something that finally opened my eyes. He said that Lena had always understood him better than I did, that she never pressured him, never demanded explanations, and never made him choose. At that moment, everything became crystal clear to me. Because if he truly saw her As just a sister, he would never compare us like that. I answered that if Lena understood him so well, then he should stay with her. I wished him happiness and asked him never to contact me again. After that, I blocked that number as well. The divorce process started shortly after. It wasn't easy. He tried several more times to reach out to me through friends and relatives, but I refused to communicate. Eventually, he stopped. A few months later, I accidentally ran into one of our mutual friends. She told me that my ex-husband and Lena were now living together. Officially, they were still just friends. But honestly, I didn't feel anything anymore when I heard that. No anger. No pain. No regret. Only relief. Now looking back, I understand that I did the right thing. I learned an important lesson. If something feels wrong, probably is. And no amount of explanations can justify crossing boundaries in a relationship. So for anyone who might find themselves in a similar situation, trust yourself. Your feelings matter.